from NBC New York says Governor Andrew Cuomo has issued the first in the nation executive order declaring gun violence in New York as a disaster emergency. The first step in a comprehensive plan that aims to tackle the surge in gun violence throughout the state. The announcement was made at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in Manhattan, New York, Tuesday afternoon. This is the first step in a comprehensive plan Cuomo outlined composed of 7 key areas, all with the aim of quelling the gun violence surge. The key areas are, quote, treat gun violence like the emergency public health it is, target hotspots with data and science. What does that mean? This is how we're going to solve gun violence. Target it with science. What are you going to do about gun violence? Science. What do you mean? Science solves everything. Positive engagement for at-risk youth. Number 4, break the cycle of escalating violence. Number 5, get illegal guns off the street. Number 6, keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. 7, rebuild the police-community relationship. Just a whole bunch of broad, vague. You might as well say, I have one step to solving the gun violence problem. Number 1, solve the gun violence problem. But how do you put break the cycle of escalating violence as one of the steps on the way to achieve? That is the goal. Now, how are you going to do that is the question. Oh, you're going to declare gun violence a public health emergency. Okay, that's really going to help. This is part of the religion of the left. They believe that every bad thing is a public health emergency because everything has to be framed in a sort of sanitized medical kind of way. Everything becomes a health crisis. It's really a medical, scientific issue. And why do they do that? Because they're trying to remove the moral dimension from all of these things. And they think just by declaring something a public health crisis, that in itself will solve the problem. And in trying to remove the moral dimension, what they're looking to avoid is the reality that gun violence happens just like all other kinds of violence. And there's a lot of it happening in our cities and not all of it involving guns, but it happens because individual human beings make the choice to behave this way. But they don't want to talk about choice. Because when you talk about choice, then you have to ask, well, why are they making this choice? Why are they acting this way? If you got a 17-year-old guy out there on the street in New York or Chicago or Baltimore, and he just goes up and shoots someone dead to steal his shoes, or because he's selling crack on a street corner where he would prefer to be. Yeah, you could blame the gun if you want and say this is a public health emergency. Or you can ask, what in the world has happened that would lead to this 17-year-old throwing someone's life away and his own life away for nothing? This is someone who does not value life, his own or anyone else's. How do we get there? That's the real disaster emergency. And I'll tell you one of the ways that we've gotten there. You want to talk about the real disaster emergency, quote unquote, in urban communities, in the cities? It's that almost all of the people responsible for this, quote unquote, gun violence don't have fathers in the home. That's not the only thing. That's not the only contributing factor, but it's a big one. You know, when you've got 70, 80% of fathers choosing not to be in the home raising their own kids, yeah, you're going to have a gun violence epidemic, and you're going to have a drug abuse epidemic, and you're going to have a suicide epidemic, and you're going to have crime of all kind is going to be an epidemic. If you were to cut that, if even, let's say we're at 70% in the city right now, if we were to make it 45%, or let's say 40%, cut it down by 30%. 40% would still be an enormous number. But you would see magically so much of this gun violence would disappear. But we can't discuss that. That is not, in the 7 key areas that he outlines, doesn't talk about that. Doesn't talk about how almost all of these perpetrators of gun violence don't have dads. Governor Cuomo, also on the gun violence front, tweeted this as well. He said, "The gun industry is the only industry in America with immunity from civil lawsuits. It's an insult to victims of gun violence. Today, I'm signing legislation to reinstate public nuisance liability for gun manufacturers in New York State. I thank the sponsors of the bill." Well, that's just a lie, just so you know. When you hear this thing about how gun manufacturers are not liable or they're insulated from lawsuits or anything, they have immunity from civil lawsuits, that is not true. A gun manufacturer can be sued under the same, for the same reason that the manufacturer of any other product can be sued. If you sell someone a product and it malfunctions, it does something that it's not supposed to do, and somebody gets hurt or killed in the process, you get sued for that. If I take my Glock 19 down to the range and I pull the trigger and it explodes and kills me, my family could definitely sue them for that. But what you can't do is sue someone or sue the manufacturer of a product if somebody else takes that product and uses it in an illegitimate and illegal criminal way. That's what you can't sue gun manufacturers for, obviously. If there's an axe murderer running around out there, you can't sue Home Depot because that's where he bought the axe. Much less can you sue the company that made the axe. You can't do that. If somebody buys the axe and they pick it up to cut some wood and the blade comes flinging off of the axe and hits someone in the head and kills them, again, you could sue them for that. But if you take the axe and choose to use it in a way that you're not supposed to, then you're the one liable. Same for guns. So this is a misnomer. This is a falsehood. It's a lie, in other words. Hey, listen, hit the subscribe button. Do it right now. I demand it. And I thank you for your compliance. It is somewhat appreciated.